Hello everyone, this is Mr. Flame, and today we're going to be starting a series on Kerbal Space Program using Realistic Progression 1, aka RP-1, Realism Overhaul, Real Solar System, and we're going to be using Principia for in-body physics in our orbits. So starting this series out, I played Kerbal Space Program with these mods for many years, and I've just never recorded any of it. But I've gotten a lot of inspiration from other content creators, and I've just thought about why not do it, you know? It's not something I've done before with this, especially I feel like I've heavily edited this, and I hope it turns out well. I hope you guys like it. But without further ado, let's get into Flame Aerospace. So in the background, you can see making our first orbital launch vehicle. And this is the Gallant launch vehicle. It's composed of the LR-79 engine, so the one American engine, as the core stage. And then our second stage is going to have a Gamma 201 engine, which I believe is a British engine. And I've never used anything other than the American engines, so I thought it'd be nice to kind of get a mix of things in here. No Soviet engines just yet, but I think I will plan on using those eventually. But yeah, and then our last stage is going to be using a Baby Sergeant solid rocket motor to kick us into orbit. These first missions are going to be called the Commoner series of missions, so Commoner 1 through I think 6 I have, maybe 5 in this video. But yeah, for Commoner 1, we're going to be completing 2 contracts with that. It's going to be the first satellite contract, so just getting it into orbit above, I believe it's 200 kilometers? Can't remember off the top of my head, but first satellite in orbit. And then we're going to be completing this first science satellite orbit contract, which this one will have to have a Geiger-Moller experiment to discover the radiation belts in the future. Starting out, I did pick up the tech node that will give us the Geiger-Moller experiment with the starting fund science that I have that it provides us with. And I also did pick up some leaders and some contractors as well to get us a little bit of boosting in some other departments. The goal for using this launch vehicle is going to be to use this repeatedly for the remainder of this program. Once we do make orbit with this launch vehicle, we will have access to the early lunar probes program. I do plan on picking that up sometime in this episode, which you guys will see and I'll talk about once we get there. But for now, we just have the funding from the early light satellites program. And as you saw in the background, I added some solar panels to that for a later mission that I will explain once we get there. And I do pick up some extra researchers and engineers to build our first launch vehicle. And what you guys will see is the first launch of Commoner 1 in the series. And with that, Commoner 1, it was a success. We have our first orbital mission in orbit. It's going to complete our first two contracts, being the science satellite contract and the first artificial satellite contract, with an orbit of 250 kilometers for its perigee and 4,500 kilometers for its apogee. Commoner 1 ends up running for a day to complete the science satellite contract, and then it runs out of electric charge after about 9 or 10 days and gives us a good amount of science. And moving on from that, you can see we got our Space Gazette newsletter to tell us we got out into orbit, and we discovered the radiation belts. After that, I ended up picking up the solar satellite contract to complete that, and the polar satellite contract to complete that one as well. I've also picked up 1958 orbital rocketry to eventually get some upgrades to our current engines, just to improve the effectiveness of our launch vehicles. And I've also picked up our new chief scientist to get some extra bonuses for that. And I picked up the early lunar probes contract for some additional funding, which will be due in 1961. And with that, we lead into our second launch of Commoner 2. Now, unfortunately, all good things come to an end. With about 30 seconds left in its runtime, the LR-79 main booster has a ignition failure, and we're left to hit the range safety button to ensure no debris hits anyone down under. But with that, that'll lead us into our third launch of the mission of Commoner 3 on October 15th, 1957. And with that, Commoner 3 is in orbit. However, this did not complete any of our contracts that we needed. Unfortunately, Commoner 3 was in a 84.93 degrees inclination, give or take, and we needed it to be between 85 degrees and 95 degrees for our polar contract. Additionally, the orbit was not even correct, so the orbit was 215 kilometers by 620 kilometers. So that didn't help. But we are going to get some good science from this using the video imaging experiment, the first one. That should grant us a good amount of science to get a couple more nodes, and especially since it's in a higher inclined orbit, we'll get even more since it'll go over more biomes and image more biomes. So that being said, we do end up picking up lunar range communications. The idea behind this is since we did pick up the early lunar probes program, um, we need to get these things researched so we'd be able to talk with our probe as it's all the way over at the moon. We also end up warping to get a little bit more science. We'll end up with 22 science, and we're going to pick up the next node for the avionics, because we need deep space avionics. At least I would like to have deep space avionics when we're going to the moon, so it doesn't take up as much power or electric charge. So yeah, this is just future-proofing myself so I don't forget to get that. Additionally, we did get 1959 orbital rocketry, so we can get some upgrades there, and we might switch out some engines there as well. But without further ado, let's go into our fourth launch of Commoner 4 on December 3rd, 1957. And there we have it. Commoner 4 runs, and unfortunately, as you can see, doesn't make orbit at all. So unfortunately that was a failure, but we did get, I believe 1958 orbital rocketry, so we're able to upgrade our Gamma 201 engine to the Gamma 301, which will give us some about 10 extra kilonewtons of thrust, and we switch out our one baby Sergeant rocket motor to the 3 cluster, so we have a little bit more thrust there as well, and it runs a bit longer. We did upgrade mission control, so that's being constructed. I think that finished, and we also upgraded the astronaut complex for future missions as well. And here we go with Commoner 5 on January 20th, 1958. So as you guys can see there, Commoner 5 was a wonderful success with an extra give or take 1,200 meters per second of delta V, we were able to get well into our required orbit parameters. Cometer 5 stayed up for a little over 2 weeks. It was required to stay up for at least 14 days, and it surpassed that by a long shot. So yeah, that also gave us a lot of science. As a lot, I mean an okay amount to the point that we got what we need. I ended up picking up a couple more science nodes, mainly being early flight controls for some finer controls while we're in orbit. We also picked up the first atmospheric analysis satellite contract. We will be waiting until next episode to do that one. And we also began construction on a new launch complex that will be supporting 130 tons for a launch vehicle. However, we won't be seeing that until the next episode as well, which will be intended for our lunar probes. And with that, I would like to thank you guys very much for watching. Please, if you guys wouldn't mind, send some comments down below of any improvements that I could work on, because this is my first time, so anything helps. So, but yeah, other than that, like I said, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye bye.